Hello! So, it's been a while. I've been away on holiday. I've come back and I thought I might go and explore the place I went on holiday, but we're not actually going to take off from there. We're taking off from Lanzarote and we're going to fly in a big loop around the ocean and come back into Tenerife, very close to where I stayed. And I have bought the Orbx scenery for Tenerife. So I think it's actually an aerosoft scenery, perhaps, I'm not sure, for Tenerife Airport, but it looks quite good. I've had a quick look at it already, but we're going to do the approach into Tenerife and see how it looks. Okay, so first things first, let's go and get inside this 737. Oh, it's worth pointing out this is the livery of the carrier we went with on our holiday, so it's package holiday, the whole family went, and we had all-inclusive, and it's the last time I'm paying for my children to go on holiday with us, because they're grown up now. And I already informed them of that before we left. Okay, so overhead. Control 6 takes us overhead in the 737, and we're going to go and turn the batteries on, and then close the lid on the battery switch. Then we're going to go down to the FMC. We're going to go to FS Actions, Ground Services, Request Ground Power, and wait for the ground power to get connected. And then once it's connected, we'll jump back overhead. So we're just waiting for that connecting sign to say release, which will mean it is connected. Shouldn't take too long. There we go. Press Control 6 to go overhead, and we can switch on the ground power. And various systems should come on around the aeroplane. Now let's just check the volume levels that I'm recording at. Should we turn it up a little bit for the airplane so you get to hear it? I'll just check the volume mixer as well in Windows. So yeah, Flight Simulator is not very loud at the moment. Now it is. Good. Okay, so ground power is on. So Control 7 takes us further overhead. We don't need the dome light today because we're flying in daylight. And we go and turn the nav systems on for the inertial navigation system. So wait for this one to say align, and then for the right system to say align, and then we change over to heading mode, and it tells us 0 because I think I've got it on instant alignment actually in the settings of the airplane, so we shouldn't have to wait for that, which is all fine. Okay, so then further down we go and arm the emergency lights, and I think we can close the lid on that as well. Then go and turn on the window heats and the probe heats. Then go down to the FMC and we'll go and program our flight. Okay, so we go back to the menu page, we go to the FMC, it's saying enter IRS position, so we go to pos init, go to next page, pick up the GPS location into the scratchpad, go to previous page, drop that into set IRS position, and the message vanishes. Set a reference airport, so we want to go from Lanzarote, which is GCRR, or Golf Charlie Romeo Romeo. And then we go to route, and we're going from Golf Charlie Romeo Romeo to Golf Charlie Tango Sierra. Golf Tango, let me just double check that. Golf Charlie Tango Sierra. I almost got it backwards, look. Okay, and then we should be able to say what runway we are leaving on as well. So runway 03. We can give it a flight number. We'll just make one up. Okay. Now we're not going to be doing any special routing because we're going straight from the standard instrument departure into the standard terminal arrival route. So what we'll do is go straight into DEP R, runway 3, and we're going to be doing the, let's have a little look, Summer 1Y. Standard instrument departure, and then go to the index page again. Actually, we can activate that at this point, so as soon as you put in how you're leaving, so it's got a, somewhere the airplane can fly, you can actually execute that straight away. And if we go to depart again, go back into arrival, and say we're going to come in ILS Z runway 07. Now let's just double check this with Navigraph. ILS Z runway 07, Conba 4G, and it's the BAML transition on the approach as well. So ILS Z 07, BAML, and the star is Conba 4G. Okay, and then execute that. The reason we're doing that particular one is that gives us this nice approach in. Yeah, it's where it lines us up nicely with Tenerife on the way in. Again, I've just picked these ones off the map. I've not used an operational flight plan to pick any of this. Something interesting that cropped up actually during the real flight when we came back. If you have a look at the map, so you would argue flying from Tenerife to Stansted, you were flying east. You would think therefore east is odd, so it should be an odd altitude, but it wasn't. We flew at 36,000 feet on the way home. So I always understood that air traffic east is odd, west is even odder. So, you know, even altitudes travelling east, odd altitudes travelling east, even altitudes travelling west. So yeah, anyway, not going to dwell on that too much. So we can go to the route page, we can go to performance initialization, and we can put in the 0 fuel weight automatically in the 737. We can put in just 1 ton for this example flight. We're going to have far more fuel than we need. We'll put in 50 as cost index. Cruise altitude, we're going to go to 360. And we'll execute that change. Go to the N1 limit page and onto the takeoff. We'll put in 5 degrees of flap for takeoff. We're in the 737-800 by the way. And calculate the V-speeds, calculate the centre of gravity, and then gives us a trim of 6.05. So let's go and adjust the aeroplane to get the trim in place. Give it a few moments for the... Always annoys me slightly that the axle in the middle of the trim is off-centre and it shouldn't be. Have you ever noticed that on the 737s, the PMDG 737s? Okay, 6 and a bit. It's about as close as we're going to get to it. So we've done that. So what we haven't done yet is go and look at the discontinuities. So we'll go to next. We'll close that discontinuity there. And have we got another one? Yes, we have. We'll close that one there. And it's all looking good. Okay. So we go over to the master control panel now. So we're going to be taking off on, if we go and zoom in and show you this, I want to go to Lanzarote, don't we, to have a look at it, show you it. It's down here. So it's runway 03, so we want roughly 30 degrees on the heading, taking off. So we'll spin that round to 30. We're going to go straight for our cruise altitude. We're not having to play games with talking to tower and getting an initial climb because we have no ATC. And we'll set the initial speed as 220 knots, just to get us away from the airport. We'll turn the flight directors on. Once you've got the flight directors on and you've got no discontinuities, you should be able to pre-select LNAV, and we can. You should be able to pre-select VNAV, and we can. And I think that's about all we need to worry about at the moment. We can arm the auto throttle. It won't actually kick in until we actually start, until we open the engines up on the runway. Okay, so set the barometric pressure. So I'll press B to shortcut that, so you can see the standby barometric pressure as activated there, and they all match across the board. So 30.03, 30.03, 30.03, it's all good. So then back overhead, fasten the seat belts, let's put it onto auto, yaw damper goes to on. Cabin pressure to cruise altitude. Aft fuel pump number 1 to on for the APU. APU to start. If I can click on it. We should see the needle jump. There it goes, and the exhaust gas temperature will race off round in a moment. So now we're just waiting for the APU to become available, and then we can cross feed over or bus transfer I should say, the power over to the APU. Away from the ground power. So we're just waiting for that needle. So it will fall back to about 4 and then the light will come on. Well, that's the plan anyway. There we go. So we're going to bus transfer over to the APU, which means we can now remove the ground power unit. So we can go Control 3 to bring the view down here. We go to the menu section, FS Actions, Ground Services, release the ground power. If we go and look outside, that will trigger the... Oh, interesting. No, it doesn't. It's the chocks, sorry. Removing the chocks should, there we go, closes the door and pulls the units away from the aircraft, which is good. So before we go much further, let's just have a look down. I'm going to, yeah, the wheel brakes are engaged, which is good. I'm just double checking that this lever is up, because we will be performing pushback in a moment. And engine start. So where we are, let's have a look at where we are on the ground. Do we actually need pushback from where we are? We could loop around from here, couldn't we? So there's probably no point in doing pushback. We're not at a gate. So anti-collision lights should go to on. We've disconnected the ground power and removed the chocks. I'm just reading through my own checklist. So overhead, I'm going to go and turn all of the fuel pumps to on. Wait for the pressure lights to go out. APU bleed can go on. At this point we would push back if we could. We're not going to. So then we are going to start the engines. So we'll do that from this view. We're going to switch the engine number 2 to GRD mode, the right ignition system, and you should see the N2 number is climbing. When it gets to 20, we can advance the start lever for engine number 2. And it continues on past. You hear that familiar drone as the engine ignites and starts pumping fuel. The starter switch should go back to off all on its own. There we go. Engine number 1. We'll use the left ignition system for engine number 1. You can just alternate them to save on wear and tear basically. So we're waiting for the N2 to come up. So this is the gas turbine speed, it's a percentage. Then as it comes past 20, we can advance the start lever for engine number 1. You will see the exhaust gas temperature and the fuel flow increase as the fuel is introduced and ignited. You can hear that happening outside. And then you can see the N1 or the turbofan speed increasing. Okay, so we're just waiting for the start system to finish. There we go. So then back overhead, now the engines are running, we can bus transfer over to use the engines to generate power for the aircraft, which we have just done. Therefore we are not using the APU anymore, so the APU can come off and the APU bleed can come off as well. We can then go and turn the hydraulic pumps on, so they are over here. Also, that's the hydraulic pumps, sorry. And then we can turn the packs on at last. So this is the environmental control system. So you can hear that hiss in the background increasing. So then on the eyebrow panel we can go and turn the taxi light to on, and we can go taxi. So we're going to avoid the truck here, which is going to sit in the way, as they always do with the generic traffic in Flight Simulator. So I need to, before I do anything, go into the controls and make sure I've got the correct profile, which I very much doubt I have. Yeah, I've got a Hellcat one. I want the 737 profile, PMDG. The reason I'm doing this is because I'm using an Airbus controller and it is not compatible. So I'm just increasing the thrust gently. So yep, my throttles are working, and I'll pull them back. So now I hold the toe brakes on, and that releases the parking brake. Let's just check the controls. We've got primary flight controls are all working, throttles are working, we're good to go. So we need to get the flaps to 5 degrees. If I can do that. There we go. And we can turn on head tracking at this point, I guess, to help us taxi. Look out over the nose. And we're moving. So we're going to slightly ignore the truck. We'll go out to the line over here and then taxi back. So I've never been to Lanzarote, so I have no idea. This is the stock airport from Flight Simulator, so obviously the buildings are not going to be very accurate. The white borders you see on some of the screens are a feature, shall we call it, of head tracking. It's a common issue. If we turn head tracking off, we won't see those white borders appear. Okay, I'm going to taxi down to the end of the runway. And while we are taxiing, I'm going to turn the head tracking back off for a moment. So we're going to turn the position lights to strobe. We're going to put the landing lights on. Ooh, these are good. I appear to have a version of the 737 that has a slightly different loadout. Very cool. So while we're taxiing down, we'll also go down and switch on the TCAS to TARA. Normally you'd only have TA for takeoff. We're going to be lazy because we know there's nothing around. It's just us. We can also press the TFC button over here. Something I don't usually feature too much on these videos, if you press the center button here and press it again, you get this lovely overlay which shows you climb profiles, which is really rather nice. But I'm going to put it back on rose mode. Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, I'm using an Airbus quadrant and stick, and it's incompatible with the 3-position gear lever in the Boeing family, so I just completely disable it and use the mouse to control the gear. In the same way, it doesn't really understand that there are 2 axes for the thrust levers. So I just use a push and hold button for reverse. Nearly there. There's quite a few ships out in the bay. I've got the seafront simulations add-on, which is providing all the shipping traffic we can see in the distance. Okay, how are we doing on the sound? Can you still hear me over the top of it? Just about. I'm going to turn it down a little bit, just so you can hear me more clearly, and center this view up. Put the head tracking on while we come around the corner here, so we can get some orientation of where we are. Obviously we don't have to hold, we haven't got ATC, we haven't got any other traffic around. Of course I'll say that, famous last words, and a 747 or something will come barreling through. Okay, so you can see the solid line there on the rose for the navigation display, which means we've got a correct flight plan without any problems in it, or at least for the part of it that we can see. Okay, let's get out of Lanzarote, shall we? You'll notice I haven't used the toga control. I'm just holding the throttles at just under 100% myself. It's a nice long runway here, so we shouldn't have any problems. Okay, no more than 3 degrees a second, and we are in the air. Remember what I said, I'm going to have to click this myself. Keeping an eye on the airspeed now and just watching the navigation display. We could probably do with making that a bit closer range so we can see it. We're going a bit steep at the moment, so we'll start lowering the nose, and we will go and engage autopilot, and then we can start lifting the flaps. Interesting that VNav has not switched on. It has now, and it's taken over obviously speed control as well in doing so, so it's going to go for 230 knots rather than the 220 that I chose, and now it's gone for 250 straight away. Look, so we can raise the flaps, which we've already done. Just looking, yep, flaps have already travelled, and we're looking good. So gear is up, flaps are up, auto throttle is armed, VNav is on, LNav is on, and we are tracking. So we should be banking right. There goes the flight director, and we're backing right. Okay, so now we can start looking out the window and enjoy the flight a little bit. It's a lovely part of the world, isn't it? So we're going to be turning left in a few miles' time. So before that happens, shall we have a look outside? Crikey, it's noisy out here. So there's the airport we've just left. Coming up through towards 6,000 feet, so we're going to go and just have a quick check of Navigraph and have a look at the chart. Does it give us the transition altitude? Hopefully it does. 6,000 feet, yeah. So we can press the standard button here to go to standard transition altitude now, or standard barometric pressure I should say, so 2992. And then once we get to 10,000 feet we can turn off the landing lights as well. So we're just waiting for that to happen. So beginning that left turn. It's amazing down there, doesn't it? How are we doing? 8,000 coming up to 9,000 feet. Nothing untoward going on overhead. Screens all look good. Just coming up 10,000 feet, so 9,800, 9,900. My word, that's a fiddly switch to hit with the mouse. There we go. Oh, that's only the off setting. We want to actually retract it. There we go. Good. This is why normally if I'm operating the big jets I turn the head tracking off, because it can be just a bit too fiddly. Okay, so this departure is pretty much done. We're now going to fly 100 miles out into the ocean and climb before joining the standard terminal arrival route into Tenerife. So I'm going to pause recording at this point and I'll join you a bit later on if I just show you where we are in LittleNavMap. There we go. So you can see we're flying out towards this loop, and then so I'll rejoin you at kind of top of descent kind of area, so I'll see you a bit later on. Okay, I'm just going to pause recording and see you soon. Hello! So we're back, and as you can see we are approaching Tenerife. So in the distance out there off the left side of the aircraft you can see the mountain in the centre of the island. If you go and look on the map you can see there's Tenerife, you can see there's La Gomera down here. So we should pass in between the two islands and then come in for the ILS. So before we get anywhere near, let's go and have a look at the ILS chart for Tenerife and find out the frequency. So 109.7 and 73 degrees for the course. So we'll come back into the aircraft, we'll set the course to 73 degrees and the nav radios to 109.7. So 73. Okay, nav radios are down in the middle. So 109.70. and 109.70. Okay. Obviously we're not going to pick anything up yet because we're too far away and we're still at 36,000 feet, so we're getting close to top of descent, I should say. So what we're looking to do is get into, this is a good point to have a look at this. Let's see what this has made of the approach. See if it's made, I think it's got it hideously wrong. So this is one of those cases where if you don't intervene, the airplane will be massively wrong. So what we're going to do is put this into plan mode and zoom in. And we're going to step through. So let's just zoom in so you see this much more closely. So Araco and then Ganta. So this is the waypoint here, look. So then we should come in step. Yeah, look, it's going straight for the VOR. It's not turning off for the rest of the route. So it's doing BAML, but then it's not going for AF014, it's going for TFS. So it's got this twice look, which is wrong. So let's see if we can meddle with this. It's probably not the correct term to use, but we'll delete TFS and we'll delete BAML again, and then we'll close the gap and we'll execute that. That's more like it. Yeah? So if we zoom out a little bit, we can see that's much more like it, isn't it? And there's the airport over there. So the aeroplane is preparing to descend. Let's see where we are on the map. Yeah, we're getting near top of descent, look. So the aeroplane has basically come right off the throttle to begin descending, so let's give it a target to get to of 2,000 feet, or 2,100 I think we're aiming for. So let's see if it will start descending on its own. So if we put this back onto map mode and zoom back out, you can see that entire route playing out. So it looks like it doesn't want to descend until much later. Normally you get a little marker. It's interesting. It wants us to be at Araco at 14,000, look, or that's what it's calculating. So if we were to go level change, for example, let's see how quickly it thinks it can get down. So throttle is pulling back, it's getting ready to drop the nose, because it's going to try and get to 2,000 feet, but we'll get the green banana showing us where we're going to get to. Here we go, look, so it's introducing a rate of descent. So on the real approach, the aircraft went to full spoilers for most of the descent. But obviously that's probably the airline trying to save money with staying at altitude as long as possible. So let's introduce spoilers and see what happens. So at the moment the aircraft can come down at 2,300 feet a minute, but we're in very thin air at the moment. As we descend, the air will thicken up and it will be able to increase its descent rate. So it'll be fascinating to watch that happen. You can see it's gently increasing as we descend. So it's holding the same speed. Remember, we're aiming for about 14,000 feet to Araco. Seems a shame not to look out and see the island, doesn't it? Which is off to our left at the moment. There it is. So that's La Gomera, and there's Tenerife itself. It's not rendered in wonderful quality yet because we're so far away from it. So let's zoom in slightly on this. So we are going to be late on the descent, but spoilers are out. We've got plenty of time. Famous last words, of course. Remember, as we come into the thicker air, this will increase. You can see it's slowly edging up the descent rate as we get into the thicker air, so the spoilers are working better and better. Okay, let's turn the head tracking on and center it up. There we go. We can have a look outside now. See the island over there. I love the way they do the wind patterns on the water in Flight Simulator. It's very good. Now we're going to be a little bit high going through Araco, but that's fine. See, if we were to drop this to 14,000, you'll probably see the green arrow all of a sudden. There it is. So let's just drop this back out to 2,000 again. So we just continue our incredibly steep descent. I mean, if we need to, we can always do a hold somewhere. So I don't know if this has got any holds in the approach. Let's go and have a look at it. No, it's straight in, isn't it? We should be fine now. We're down to 23,000 feet now and dropping. See what I mean? Suddenly we're able to descend a lot more quickly because we're dropping into the thicker air. So we're getting back on track slowly. So if you look at where Bamel is on the map, it's just on this point before we fly the curve, basically. LittleNavMap's not quite clever enough to draw it. It's now dropped to 22. The wind is obviously not helping us too much, but we'll see. Another way of increasing your descent rate, if you absolutely need to, is to drop the speed. So if we drop this to 220, for example, and then we should be able, you can just see we're getting away from 250, so we can put the flaps down as well as the spoilers and getting a higher descent rate. So as soon as it gets to 220, we can actually go for 230, but as soon as it gets to 220, the nose will drop again. So we've got even more drag. So we've effectively got crow braking now because we've got the flaps and the spoilers in operation. You'll see the green banana suddenly comes swooping in. There it comes. And remember, the lower we get, the more drag, the higher the descent rate. What I mean now by crow brakes is if you go and have a look at the wings now, we've got flaps hanging out this end of the wing and the spoilers hanging at the top end of the wing. Yeah? So we don't need to worry about slowing down at 10,000 feet now. We have got a warning up here, master caution, that's just the fuel. It's because we've run out of the centre tanks, so we'll go and turn the centre tank pumps off. You can see that's reflected down here on the little gauge. So let's go and quickly have a look at the chart again. So what we're looking for here, transition level set by ATC, and on the ILS page it will probably have the transition altitude. There we go, 6,000 feet. So we need to set that. Let's go and find out what it is. We can do this in LittleNavMap actually. So let's look at Tenerife, go for information for the airport, open the airport page, go to the weather, and we've got a QNH 1018, that's hectopascals, yeah, or 30.06 in inches. So what's this configured for at the moment? It's in inches at the moment, so 30.06 once we get to 6,000 feet. So we're flying around the corner, basically around the end of the island. This is the north side of the island, this is the south side of the island. So we're starting to get a closer look at Tenerife now. We're still pretty much on target. Let's increase the zoom on the navigation display. So there's Tenerife, ladies and gentlemen. Should be able to get away with lifting the flaps, I would have thought. I'm just going to lift them, see what happens. Yeah, it's dropped it a tiny amount. The flaps weren't actually doing a huge amount to help descent. So we are getting into the thicker air now. So 10,000 feet just coming up. We're going to go and switch on the landing lights. We never turned off the taxi lights earlier, did we? Oh, something occurred to me while we were flying along, and somebody will comment on it. I didn't switch the anti-skid, or the auto brake, sorry, to rejected takeoff on takeoff, which you should. I really do need to get around to putting that on the checklist at some point, because somebody always comments on it, but I very rarely use it. And they have a go at me about not following correct procedures. The scenery looks very good, doesn't it? So you can see we have picked up the glide slope signal. So I'm going to slow us down a bit more. And let's zoom this in a bit further. Ideally we want to be at 2,000 feet when we get to, is it 072? Let's have a quick look at the map. Because remember, we're flying around this loop. Oh, it's 7Z, I should say, which is where it connects. Yeah, so don't forget LittleNavMap at this point because it's inaccurate. Look, we're doing this. This is where Navigraph starts to win over LittleNavMap when you get situations like this. But even it can't figure out how to draw it correctly, look. It's like overlaying the routes. Okay, let's drop this down to 180 knots. It will lift the nose to do that. We're not going to worry. Yeah, we're getting an overspeed warning, don't worry. Oh no, sorry, it's the undercarriage, of course it is. So ignore the warning for a moment. There we go, warning's gone away. It's because I'm using the undercarriage, I'm using the flaps and the undercarriage to slow down. And you can see we're going to be broadly in the right place. We were a bit late coming down, which is why we had to use a few unconventional techniques to make that happen. I have heard some amazing stories about crews deploying flaps at high altitude in the real world and coming down at sort of 5,000–6,000 feet a minute, which is possible, but you have to configure the aeroplane for it. Okay, so you can see the airport out ahead of us. You can see we are below the glide slope. We can't see the localizer yet. We're too far away. but it should come online very, very soon. So we'll go and correct the heading as well to be the runway direction. So we want this to be 73 degrees, same as the course. So everything should line up now. Okay, so if we change this over now to approach mode, yeah, we can see the marker there. We're still below the glide slope, so we can go to approach mode if we choose to, or we can choose to fly the airplane now if we want to. So there we go, we've got a lock on the glide slope. We're not in approach mode, remember. So I'm going to match my throttle position to where the needles are. So if you just look briefly at this, I've got time, I've got a few seconds. You can see a marker on the outside of the throttles. It's one of the options. See, as I move the throttle, remember I'm on auto throttle at the moment, I can put my throttle position in the same place that the airplane's actually got the throttles. So that's one of the settings in the PMDG menu in the FMC. Okay, so let's go and turn off the autopilot. That will make an alarm happen. We're going to turn off the auto throttle. That will make another light start flashing there. So that's all good. So we're starting to drop the flaps and lose some speed. On the glide slope. Whoa, there was a huge bump in the air then. So we're on full flaps now. We're a bit high. Okay, it's a bit gusty, that's why. So let's press F just to center the view up. Just dropping back down onto the glide slope, keeping an eye on the speed. We want to stay about 140 knots if we can. It's the we're in the 737-800. It's quite long. It hasn't got much of an alpha level or angle before you do a tail strike, so you need to keep the speed up. It doesn't react very quickly either because it's that bit bigger and heavier than the 7 or the 600. So you notice now we've lifted the nose that little bit to hold the glide slope, and we haven't held it. And we're getting very slow, so I'm increasing the throttle. Just pulling it back on track, the sort of speed we want, the sort of descent rate we want. Now this is going to be the fun and games time to see how this airport looks in terms of, do we have any approach lights and do they match up with the ILS? Because quite often they don't in Flight Simulator. It's a bit of a failing of it. And I tend to, once I can see the approach lighting, if the airport has it, I will rely on it rather than the ILS. Oh, and here comes the stuttering. The old single-threaded problem of Flight Simulator. It's quite gusty today. Yeah, it's quite gusty and blustery, and the airplane's suddenly losing. We've fallen into a bit of a pocket in the air there. Then you suddenly noticed it sink. So we're just correcting for that. I think it maybe the wind just changing direction is causing less and more lift as we come in.
100. 50. 30, 20, 10.
There we go. It's reversers. Don't really need them. We've got a high-speed exit right here. We're already quite slow. Flaps can come up. Landing lights can come back off. The strobes can go back to solid. TCAS can go back to, if I can find it, standby. And we'll go and find our parking spot. Did I turn the taxi light completely off earlier? Yeah, I did. Let's put the taxi light back on. Let's put the head tracking on, center our view back up where we're supposed to be sat in the cockpit. And we're going to roll into a highly detailed version of Tenerife Airport. Bought from Orbx. There is a pack where you can buy several, both the north and the south airports together, but they don't appear to be as good quality as if you buy just the south airport, which is the Sofia Airport, I think it's called. So we'll stay on the taxiway for a little way and then we'll turn in towards the main building. Now, I think this scenery depicts the airport before the centre was finished, and when I visited it a couple of weeks ago or last week, this part was finished. So the actual building we were in was the bigger one, but it's the layout of the actual terminals is the same. Should we go for a gate? So if we pull in here, ease it forwards gently. There we go. So then put the parking brake on. So while holding the tow brakes on, we can lift that. And then there's two ways of doing this. You can either put the APU back on, or we can come down into the FMC, go to the menu page, FS Actions, Ground Services, put the chocks in place, request ground power to be connected. As soon as it's connected, we can switch over straight over to ground power without using the APU. So we're just waiting for that to say, there we go. So straight overhead we can go to ground power, and at that point we can shut the engines down, because we are now using ground power for power generation, not the engines. Now obviously there's a whole raft of things we can go and switch back off overhead if we so wanted to. I'm not going to waste your time with that, because we've seen it done. It's the same as, you know, setting the plane up but doing it in reverse. So you can see the jetway is connected to the aircraft, which is all good. Okay, so what we're going to do is go to the drone camera. Now we've shut the engines down, and we're going to go and have a look around. So this is Tenerife Airport, and it's remarkably well done. So you can see here's the way into the airport that you would normally come in with the coach or your airport transfer vehicle, and you come around this roundabout. Remember, we're on the right side of the road, and you come up around here and drop down into the car parks. And if you've been here on a holiday, you will recognise this. It's quite spooky how accurate this is to the real place. So you come down to the places where all the reps are and the departure lounges. Obviously the other way around, you would have come out of here and gone to join your coach. So if we go and have a jump around the building, let's go and jump over the other side back to where we were, and we can go into the terminal through the wall. Got a bit of a lean going on with the camera, haven't we? There we go. So obviously they haven't got all the numbers, it's a repeated graphic for the signage, but it's still quite cool. Oh, actually no, it's not. Look, it has got the gate numbers. But yeah, the higher number gates at the far end are obviously the area that was under construction when this scenery was made, and it's now been done, so this is a little bit out of date. But the main shopping area is over to that side, that is correct. But yeah, there we go. So yeah, that's like the main food hall and shopping area now, I think. And then gate 40, I think it is, down the far end this way. But that's not modelled in the scenery yet. It's very, very cool though, isn't it? It's very reminiscent of the real place. They really have done a good job on it. Even down to the gantries with all the lights, and the modelling of those is really nicely done. Okay, so we've arrived at Tenerife. Time to go and have a holiday. It's interesting, it would be fascinating. I haven't got it installed at the moment, but it would be fascinating to install the Paralines add-on, because one of the main things I noticed as we were approaching the airport and as we left, all the Paralines nearby, the masts have all got, you can see them over there in the distance, they're all painted red and yellow, that's accurate, but they've all got the balls on the wires, you know, so for low-flying aircraft, so if you had to redirect and do an emergency procedure, so you can see where the wires are. But yeah, so it's a fascinating place. Obviously over on the airfield you can see there's the radar on this end of the airfield as well. They've modelled that really nicely. It's exactly how it looks in the real world. So is the tower down the far end. It's almost photographic, to be honest. It's very good. So there you go. Tenerife. I'm going to leave it there. Hopefully you enjoyed that, and I'll see you again soon.